It is with incredible pleasure we welcome to the stage Alan Cross to interview the one and only Scott BORCHETTA.
You founded Big Machine, you discovered Taylor Swift, you work for DreamWorks Records, MCA Records, you work for Mary Tyler Moore's record company, which I have to ask about. You're an in-house mentor to an American Idol, you've done race car driving. Clearly I've wasted my life, and you haven't. So I am extraordinarily curious as to where I went wrong. So if we might just come at it from that point of view. You were the son of a record man.
Yes. The things that you learn that you don't realize you've learned. You know, my dad in the 60s and 70s worked for all the major record companies out in Los Angeles. And so it was commonplace to have music on all the time. It was commonplace to have the Beach Boys stop by, or Tommy Rowe, or someone.
Stop by where?
The house, you know, just.
Oh, so Mike Love and Brian Wilson just wander in.
Crazy. And so, you know, you never take those things for granted, but also you realize they're people, but you also see what's really special about special artists. There's that intrinsic special character. And so being around it, I think that by osmosis, it's given me the ability to identify it, you know, more than the commoner, to be honest with you.
I know what you mean, because if you come into contact with a true superstar, there is a charisma that comes off them effortlessly. It's the kind of person when they walk into the room and your back is to the door, you know they're in the room.
Yeah, I always say the colors in the room change. Like if Steven Tyler walked in right now, you'd be going, what the? Steven's here. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because it's just that thing. You know, and I'm sure any of you can remember a moment, whether you got to meet Mick Jagger or Taylor or somebody like that, and you just went, wow, there's a lot more juice in this person than everybody else.
And it's nothing that you can teach, it's nothing that you can coach, it's just there.
Yeah, when you can recognize that talent, you can teach it how to exist in the real world with the rest of us.
So, okay, you had the Beach Boys dropping in for dinner every once in a while, and then you played bass in a punk band?
Guilty.
And it didn't work. Define
work. Did we get signed? No.
Do any of us know the name of the band?
Let's change the subject.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, okay, the punk thing didn't work out, so you go to work for Dad. And Dad, what record label was he working for?
Yeah, so let me give you the path real quick. So, grew up in Southern California, and my father moved down to Nashville in 1979. So in 1981, I was playing in bands in LA, and I wanted to get away from LA and just see the rest of the country. And so I went to visit in Nashville, and I never went back. There was so much going on, and it was so liberating to actually be away from LA.
But wait, how does somebody make a transition from being in a punk band to somebody who is in the country music capital of the world?
Not giving a hoot about what people think.
Okay.
Because no, I did not fit in on any level. But it was interesting, if you think back to that moment, if you look at music history, you had punk starting 76, 77, but you also had the outlaw movement happening at the same exact time. You had Willie and Waylon. And you can make the argument that it was basically the same thing. They were both rebelling against the system. And that's where I could immediately relate and go, okay, I get that. I'm drawn to that.
So you end up in Nashville working for Dad, and then you strike out on your own working for Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
I had no idea that Mary Tyler Moore had a record label.
Most people don't.
What would you find on a Mary Tyler Moore record label?
Well, if you are really into your country history of the mid-'80s, we literally had the top new female artist of the year with Judy Rodman and Holly Dunn. And so we were very successful for what we were. The label was a favor to one of the executives, a gentleman named Alan Bernard, who used to manage Mary Tyler Moore back in the day. At some point, great business deal, et cetera, and they said, look, we owe you a favor. If there's anything we can ever fund for you to pay you back for everything that you've ever done for us, do it. And so he decided to start a record company in Nashville, and it was actually very successful, but in all their brilliance, they closed it down in the end of 1988. And again, if you're a historian of anything country music, you know that people talk about the class of '89 over and over. That's when Garth Brooks happened, that's when Alan Jackson happened, Clint Black, etc. So their timing was terrible.
So you went on to become an independent record promoter. Now, in America, in the late 80s, the term independent record promoter did not have a very good connotation. It was weird.
How many people here have read The Hitman, the book? Okay, we're going to come back to that in a minute.
Okay. I just know a guy that was injected with methyl chloride and left in a ditch one day because he wouldn't play a record. But that's another, we'll come back to that.
It's so easy. It's just 3 minutes. Play the record. You know?
So you do the independent thing for a while, and then you end up back in the big machine of the record label industry. So there's DreamWorks, there's MCA, there's Universal, and you're all working in Nashville. Who were you working with at the time?
So the transition to independent, one of the things that I was looking to do was be the one that could break the edgier artists. So back at that point, you know, working with Dwight Yoakam, the Kentucky Headhunters, Marty Stewart, so many different things that were edgier, but there was an open lane to go and establish myself as the guy that could break these edgier records. Even K.D. Lang, I worked a couple of K.D. records. And from that, I had opportunities to go into a couple different major labels, and looking at the rosters at the time, what was happening at MCA was George Strait, it was Reba Mcentire. We were breaking Vince Gill. We had all of these amazing acts, and it was just a moment, and that looked like the place to be, and we had a fantastic run from 91 through 97. And we literally had a gold or platinum breakthrough every single year. And
that's when money flowed like water in the music industry, because people were still buying records. Country fans were incredibly loyal, so you could
during that time, Alan, we did over $1 billion in business at MCA Nashville.
Wow.
The time I was there.
Wow. So this lasts until, well, after Napster. And then you decide that, no.
Well, no, so 97, I am very unfortunately fired from MCA. And the next day we started DreamWorks Nashville. So that was the transition and the irony. You know, we got DreamWorks up and running because there's something, when you work for a big label like that, that's so powerful, and you have all these great brands, that moment of being untethered, you really kind of sit back and go, okay, did I have anything to do with it? Did I help add to the total? And now I have a mission to destroy them. So within that, it's like, okay, you know what? We've got to come strong. And when we launched DreamWorks, we reignited Randy Travis's career. Our first single went to #1, and we couldn't kick them in the shins enough. You know, it's just the Dragon Slayer mentality. And so we immediately established DreamWorks as a major player. And then the irony, in January of 2004, Universal, which had always had a joint venture with DreamWorks, purchased the other half. So I was back in the same building.
The people that you were kicking.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is not going to work well or long.
So time to cash in the chips and start out fresh.
Yeah, there was a moment where, you know, all the things that I didn't like about major labels, with the waste and the way decisions were made and the compartmentalization of, well, this great executive can't talk to you about publishing because they're in marketing. It's like, well, how about if the best idea just wins every day? How about that? And they could never get it through their own egos to let that happen.
So you were going to build Big Machine the way you thought a record label needed to be built, from the ground up.
That was the mission, yeah.
And you had no office, you had no money, you had no staff, you had nothing except your eye on this 14-year-old girl. That sounds weird. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my wife's here, man.
I'm sorry. Okay. You were scouting this 14-year-old talent.
Yeah, so the irony is I get a package. This is in October of 2004. My deal with Universal goes through September of 2005. And so I get Taylor's package in October. I meet her November 2nd, 2004, was blown away, and go to see her 2 nights later at the Bluebird Cafe, go to meet the family. Just just completely knocked out with her being, how smart she was at 15 years old, how incredible the songs were. And then I go back for a second meeting. I said, here's the deal. If you want to be signed at Universal, I will introduce you to the executives and try to help you get signed, but you need to know something. I'm leaving in a year. I'm going to start my own label. I don't know what it's called, but I can make you one promise tonight. When I start it, you have a deal with me. And they looked at me, just kind of went, they go, wow, we finally found somebody who gets her, and he's crazy. And so a couple weeks later, Taylor had just turned, I guess she would have turned 15, and she called me herself and said, hey, just want to let you know I've made up my mind and I'm waiting for you. It wasn't from a manager, it wasn't from a parent. And I said, well, you've made my day.
Why do you think she made that decision?
I think because she had had a deal at RCA prior. She had a development deal. And they did not believe in her songs. And they were trying to get her to work with other songwriters, different producers. And they didn't feel that they understood her. And I was immediately fascinated by her songs. And I didn't realize it back then, but you know, when she came into the office, you know, she literally came into Universal. And she played me a song, played me a second song. And for those of you who know Taylor's music, the second song was Picture to Burn. And I said, that's a hit song. And I think from that moment, she goes, okay, I think this guy gets me and understands my song. I've never once brought up to her, it's like, well, maybe we should do an outside song. So she knows that I believe in, at her being, she's a songwriter. Incredible at everything else. But in her being, the most important thing. And 50 years from now, when you look back at this moment, they'll go, oh, the Michelangelo of the moment was Taylor Swift.
So without any infrastructure for your new label, without even a name for your new label, you obviously needed some serious support from the family. I mean, we're dealing with a 15-year-old, not of age, can't make her own mind, or can't make her own deals. So you have to work, I guess, with her dad and with her mom. And how did that work out?
Well, I've had a lot of prior experience with minors. So one thing to learn, if you haven't had this experience and you might be working with one, do yourself a favor right now. Invite the parents in. Because the worst thing you could do is think that you're going to work without them. And guess who the experts are in their children? The parents. And her parents are incredibly smart. So they've been part of the team from day one.
They must have really believed in their daughter.
Yeah, enough to leave Pennsylvania and move to Nashville.
Okay, I'm 14 years old. I said, Mom, Dad, I want to be a music star. Yeah, that's real nice. Have you done your homework? But in this particular case, the parents were, they moved their kid across the country so their 15-year-old daughter could follow her dreams of being a superstar. And it worked. So this has ruined life for, millions of parents all over the world, right? Because every once in a while, it does come true.
You have to believe. And I can tell you that her father always believed that she would be the biggest
Did he
artist
invest?
in the world. Pardon?
Did he invest?
Yeah, he is a minority investor in Big Machine.
Okay, well, again, he put his money where his mouth was,
He did.
right? So she goes on to release Tim McGraw, first single in 2006. That worked out okay.
Yeah, it did. I went to Tim McGraw's manager and label and played it for him. And so manager Scott Simon said, all right, so this is kind of cool. He didn't really get the record. He goes, why are you playing this for me? I said, because I don't want you to sue me. Okay. Because Mike Curb is known for suing a lot of people. And I don't want to be one of them. He sued me later, by the way. But he didn't sue me over that. So there was this moment of just brilliance on her part, because where we really connected on what was going to be the first single, she came up with this brilliant line, the biggest artist in country music, when you think Tim McGraw, I hope you think of me. And I went, brilliant. And I said, that's the first single. She goes, really? I said, yeah. She goes, well, that was easy.
So, but there were a lot of people who thought, you're crazy. Teenage girls don't listen to country music.
Wrong. Here's what happened. At DreamWorks, we had an artist named Jessica Andrews. I don't know if any of you would know her. I see a couple of heads nodding. We had this huge hit called Who I Am. But unfortunately, Jessica didn't have all the right stuff. Super great singer, but really didn't understand the engagement or have the mad desire to do all the work that it took to do. But what it did is it opened the door, and we saw all these young females looking for a new hero, a new leader. If you think back to that time, Britney had derailed, Lindsay Lohan had derailed, Christine, all of them had these problems all of a sudden. And they were looking, and I'm like, oh my God, if I see the right thing at the right moment, the moment is now. And when I saw her, I just went, this could be it. We saw it. It's just they didn't have their person. Well, Taylor was their person.
So she had this run as a country artist, but then made a very often unsuccessful, not her, but when you try to pivot out of one format to another, it almost never works. I mean, Steven Tyler's having trouble right now. Aaron Lewis from Stain has managed to do it. But, you know, you're a young country artist, female, and you decide that you want to go more pop. How was that engineered?
Well, if you look at the transition, it wasn't one day that we just said, okay, on this day, you're not going to be this anymore, and you're going to be this. On Fearless, both Love Story and You Belong With Me, they made history. They were the first singles ever in the airplay chart era to have a #1 country airplay single and a #1 pop single. So the lines were in the water from the second album. And so we had Mine off of the third album, which was I would say, minor plus pop hit. And then when the Red album came along, that was really the polar moment. I remember clear as day, she said, hey, I need you to come over and listen to a song, because even today, when she's excited, it's, Scott, you gotta hear this. Where are you? And either she comes over to the office or I go to where she is. And she played Red. And the song was brilliant, but the production wasn't right. And I said, you know, Taylor, these lyrics are fantastic. The melody's amazing. But the production, if you're going to write a song like this, it deserves to have the proper production to it. And she goes, all right. And it was myself and Nathan Chapman in the studio with Taylor. And they weren't really happy with me, honestly. And they said, well, let us try again. I said, of course. So I came back 3 weeks later, and they played the latest iteration.
Can I ask what the first production sounded like?
It sounded like a country producer trying to make a pop record.
Okay.
And after they played me the new version, and after the first chorus, Taylor said, stop. Because I told her last time, I said, maybe we go to a Max Martin. And she had always wanted to work with Max. And but she felt like they could do it in Nashville. And so she said, stop. And she just looked at me, she said, call Max. And that's where this piece of it started. And so, again, I remember clear as day, we had flown to Bentonville to do an event for Walmart. I went back to Nashville, she went to LA. 8 hours later, telephone rings. Scott. Like, is this a good or a bad? She goes, I don't even know what the name of this song is called, but we are never, ever getting back together. It's crazy. That was the first thing that they wrote. And so that was at the end of the process of Red. So there's this great arc through the album that is telling you where it's going, but it was never putting a stake in the ground until 1989. But we had already done the transition, and she was the one who made the conscious decision, because there were other songs that she had written around the 1989 era that could have worked at country. And she goes, you know what? I don't want to put those songs on the record. This is where I'm going. And there were a lot of conversations. I said, you know what? It says your name on the album. It says your name on the marquee. I got you. Let's go.
It must have been interesting working these records to radio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you would come in with a poppier song to a group PD for a country station, and he would go, what happened to the Taylor we knew? And then you would go to a CHR group PD, and they would go, this is a country artist.
Well, it wasn't that, because she has such an amazing following, and has been really once the first album took off. You couldn't deny that. So at that point, you had to remove yourself as a gatekeeper and honor the fans. And then it just got down to research. But we had such momentum that we could steamroll the research.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that could get me in trouble, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Taylor Swift is famous for writing songs about people she dated. Is there a legend to that, a myth to that, something that needs to be corrected?
So we have a very specific rule. I will talk about the records as they're produced and made, but when it gets to this point, I have a saying, the first rule of Taylor Club is don't talk about Taylor Club.
Got it. So let's go back to Big Machine. We'll come back to Taylor in a bit because there's this, what's that company called? Spotify, I think? We'll come back to them in just a bit. But let's get back to Big Machine for a second. So you grew from nothing, basically working out of your car or your home, and you've got a number of subsidiaries. Let's talk about the subsidiaries of Big Machine. There's Valerie Music. Mm-hmm. That's still in operation?
Yes.
What does Valerie Music do?
So the entire mission of Big Machine and some of the things that I wanted to make sure that we got away from is I wanted to make sure that every artist that we signed had every opportunity to be successful. And you can't have 20 artists on one imprint and be successful in country, at least. You've got one very specific lane. And so I always wanted the roster to be 5, 6 artists max. Anything past that, the math works against you, and you might as well just ship the single to the dumpster. It doesn't work. So in 2007, Taylor's up and rocking. We're having hits with an artist named Jack Ingram, with Danielle Peck. We had just signed Trisha Yearwood. Garth Brooks calls. Garth wants to do a record. Meanwhile, I've got Justin Moore and Jimmy Wayne sitting on the bench. Jewel wants to make a country record, and I thought that could be a huge success, and it was. And there was this moment where we were putting this huge campaign together for Garth Brooks, and we launched this song called More Than a Memory. And it's the only time in the history of any country chart that we had a song debut at #1 with that song. But as we were setting up this huge campaign for Garth, I went to a Borders bookstore, got a cup of coffee, and I sat down and was thinking about, okay, how can I take care of our artists who we've already signed? How can we grow but not lose our culture? Let's not change what's working, but how do we do it? And I'm thinking maybe we do a second imprint. And so I'm reading this History of Country Music book, and I'm a huge Johnny and June fan, always have been, always will be. And something I discovered in this book, June Carter Cash, her first name was Valerie. And I just wrote that down. I said, that's so powerful. And so I went home, looked it up, of valor, of strength. And I'm just like,
yeah, because it's
cool
not
name.
Spelled right. V-A...
Intentionally, it's valor.
Yeah. E.
Yeah. But it's a homage to June Carter Cash as well. And so going to sign Jewel, I had to fly to Dallas and then drive 90 minutes. And how many of you have seen the movie Seven? Well, at the end, they're driving forever, and unfortunately, they find Gwen's head in a box.
I was going to wonder,
right?
How are you going to bring that into the conversation? But okay.
I'm driving
Continue.
forever, and I'm going, they're just going to kill me and bury me out here, right? It's over. And so I get there, and Ty Murray, and if you know Ty Murray, he's one of the most badass bull riders in history, right? A very bad man. Very cool guy, but you don't mess with Ty. So Ty and Jewel come walking in the restaurant. And so I'm telling her, I want to sign you, but it's going to be a new label. It's not going to be Big Machine. And so I'm selling, I'm doing it, and Ty just kind of lifts up his hat and he goes, honey, I think you should do it. And it was done.
Wow.
And so we launched Valerie with Jewel and Jimmy Wayne and Justin Moore. And the whole reason was we wanted to continue that same culture. The only way we could get bigger was not to go vertical, but horizontal and build another vertical for these artists to make sure that they had all the attention and opportunity that we had promised.
So you also have Nash Icon Records?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of that?
Okay, so Nash Icon is a joint venture with the Cumulus Broadcasting Company. And what happened 2.5 years ago is met with the gentlemen who were running Cumulus at the time, and they had acquired a bunch of assets, Westwood One, more radio stations, et cetera. And they said, hey, we're interested in trying to get into this business. And I said, well, if you want to do a mainstream label outside of your own stations, it won't work. And they go, well, I said, how about this? Because I'm going to back up for a second. Reba Mcentire, I started working with her at MCA in 1991. And the only time I've been away from Reba was those 7 years at DreamWorks. And so Reba had come over to Valerie, and we had had 2 hit #1 albums, #1 singles, etc. We got to the end of the second album, and I said, hey, let's start talking about another record. And she goes, thank you, but I'm done. I can't do this again. I can't go through all this radio. I can't take them saying no anymore. Thank you for all you've done. And I was heartbroken. I'm like, I am not going to fail this person. And so I was just keeping this in the back of my head. So back to this meeting with the Cumulus executives, I said, I have an idea. What if we take all of your classic country stations and one of your Westwood One networks, and let's create a relevant classic country format. So let's play a new Reba next to an old Reba. Let's play a new Garth next to an old Garth. And they said, we'd love it. So we created Nash Icon. And so now I've got to convince Reba to make another record. So we get this done, and I said, hey, I called her husband at the time, Narvel. I said, hey, I've got something for you. Sandy and I want to take you and Reba out to dinner. Okay. So we sit down at dinner. Reba's awesome. I hope that you've met her, and if you haven't, I hope you get to, because she's one of the most wonderful people on the planet. And she goes, hey, how you doing? Oh, we talked for about 5 minutes. Then she leans across the table and goes, all right, what do you got? And so I said, how about if you had the ability to make a record and never have to worry about a radio tour again, never have to do any free shows, never have to do anything except make the record, we choose the single, and it goes on the air. And she goes, can that really happen? I said, no, it can't really happen. It can't, it's done. You say yes and we're in. She goes, I'm in.
Doesn't it raise some suspicions when you have a record label so closely aligned with a radio group?
Not when you do it by the law.
Okay.
So every time at the top of the hour, they will make a FCC announcement of there will be songs this hour on the Nash Icon label that are for promotional purposes. So that plays at the top of every hour that they play one of our Nash Icon records.
How many stations are on board?
Well, if you look at the Westwood One channel and the terrestrial channels, there are over 100 stations.
Does this...
The #1 station in Nashville, by the way, country station, is Nash Icon.
Does this influence chart position?
Yeah, but it's not robust enough to really go outside of the 30s or 40s. Okay. So really, it's not a chart mission. It's a marketing mission, because they are our partners. All of the promotion, all of the noise is part of our agreement.
Well, it's interesting, because a number of radio groups that I've been involved with have thought about doing the same thing, but they've been scared away because they're not really sure what the legal implications may be of being a radio group and a record label.
You know why? They're probably big companies, right?
They are.
Way too many lawyers. It'll never happen.
Okay, interesting. So let's go back to Taylor, and let's go talk about Spotify. Now, streaming is here to stay. I think we have seen that all the major labels are experiencing more revenue from streaming than they are from physical sales now.
Let's pause right there.
Okay.
Because that's not true yet.
Oh.
Okay, so there are a couple of artists who are completely overperforming right now. So if you look at how amazing Drake is doing in the streaming world, The Weeknd, Ed Sheeran, etc., those are so far ahead of the rest of the industry. You know, when you say album equivalent, streaming equivalent album, track equivalent album, does everybody know what a streaming equivalent is? If you don't, raise your hand. Okay, so basically you're saying 1,500 spins is equal to one album, right? So because it's a sliding scale on the rates, we're not getting paid the same amount. So they may say, hey, we're up in, number of X, but it hasn't worked its way down to the median yet. So as far as the ones who are super performing, Drake and Ed, they're doing very well. The rest of the world will catch up. In Nashville, what I've been all over Apple and Spotify and Amazon about is the Battle of Nashville has not even started yet. So get down here and start investing, because when Middle America catches up with streaming, then there will be the coming revolution. But let's not forget, Spotify isn't profitable yet. So I think we should be really specific and careful and make sure, because I agree with you 100%, the genie is out of the bottle and she's not going back in. So we have got to make premium subscription services work, period, the end. But that means we need a healthy Spotify. Is their mission to be an IPO, or is their mission to be a profitable company? Well, you know what? We need them to be profitable. Apple, thank God that they're investing in music. Amazon, same thing. So streaming absolutely is the future, but let's not forget, and you know, I literally wear it on my sleeve, as you see there and see right here. Music has value. I always find that anything that we pay for, we value more. So I think everybody should be on a premium service of some sort.
Okay, so let's go back to when Taylor pulled her music off Spotify. Walk us through that, because I remember following the story and I was really confused because nobody really understood how Spotify worked. Nobody understood the royalty rates, and nobody understood why somebody would want to stick with a dead format over what was to be the next big thing. So take me through that whole thing so I understand it.
Well, selling 1.4 million units the first week is certainly not a dead format, is it?
No, but if we're,
right.
You know, she's an exception. Her, Adele, a few others, but okay.
Yeah, but also it's how you want to enjoy the music, and how have we trained you as a fan? What is your expectation of that music? So the reason that we did it, it was a meeting that we had on October 24th. And I said, you know, if we're gonna hold back the current album, because the prior one we had held back from free streaming with Red, I said, why don't we make a bigger statement? Why don't we pull everything off? And let's at least start the conversation, because you can make the conversation. At that point, 2.5 years ago, most people didn't even know what Spotify was. So it's like, okay, if this is a double-edged sword, we're going to bring a lot more attention to Spotify, because most people outside of the super fans and people really paying attention don't know what it is yet. But we've got to make this statement, and let's make the statement for all artists. This isn't just about Taylor. This is for the struggling artist, but the whole ecosystem. All of you are somehow involved in the music ecosystem, and it affects every single one of us, whether you are a producer, an engineer, a songwriter, a grip on tour. It affects every single one of us. So we've got to start this conversation. She was the loudest way to make a statement, and it's true to what she believes. So that was the moment, and you know, she said it in Wall Street Journal and in other places. This is art, okay? The music that we make, let's not ever dismiss about what we make every day. Because when you look, like I said earlier, 50, 100 years from now, what are our cultures going to be defined by? Good God, let's hope it's not be defined by what's happening with our president, right? Let's be better than that. You know what? Because we can be better than that. And if you look through the ages, what defines us? Art defines us. And so why not come out and say that? You know what? Music is important. Music has value. We all love it. It's part of our DNA. It's part of what we do every day. And you know what? I feel better paying for it, because it just feels more valuable to me.
Well, we do need a reset on that, because there's an entire generation that's never set foot in a record store, and they have never actually purchased any music. It's always been free, whether it be
education.
on YouTube.
You know, this isn't a battle. This is about education. Yeah. Because the last thing they want is like, wow, no record companies or artists can afford to put music out anymore.
So how do we, in the age of streaming, educate people to the point where this stuff does have value? Because for this generation, it's valued less because they've never paid for it.
Well, no, it's working. You know, if we had somebody with Spotify, if Stefan or Daniel were sitting here, you know, their conversion rate is good, and it's going to get better. And what I'm on them about is, let's make that premium subscription opportunity and experience better. I'll give you more for the premium. Don't make freemium and free, or free and premium the same exact content. Let's put our exclusives on premium. Let's give you the singles, etc. This isn't about being completely exclusive. It's about including you and say, hey, wait, you know what? It's a great product, and we've got even more wonderful product and content for you in the premium service.
Now, for that to work, you would need the other streaming services to agree to.
Well, Apple already does it.
Okay.
You know, Amazon is already doing it. So
is Google Play doing it?
Google. Well, if you Google Play, you know, there are a lot of different things. YouTube, no, but Google Play and YouTube Red, yes.
Okay. So this windowing, how long is the window? I mean, we've seen the movie industry getting away from windowing to the point where in the next couple of years we may have day and date release on VOD. How long do you think the window should be for a, let's call it a premium artist, to have their material only for the paid subscription tier?
You know, it really depends on what the artist wants to do, because the last thing we want you as a fan to think is that we don't want you to have our music. So it's a very specific conversation with each artist. I didn't come in one day and pull all of the Big Machine Label Group catalog off Spotify because Tim McGraw wanted to be on. I said, okay, I just want to make sure that you understand where we are, why we're saying this, and that we're fighting for you. But at the end of the day, it's their call whether they want to be on the free service or not.
There was a weird story about a month ago about Taylor launching her own streaming service.
No, it was just tied to her AT&T channel.
Oh, okay, so that has nothing to do with coming up with what Garth Brooks wanted to do, for example. No, okay. Can tell when
I tried to tell him first rule of Taylor Club.
Okay, all right. So now Universal has signed a multi-year deal with Spotify that's going to apparently include some windowing. I just heard this morning that Merlin has signed a multi-year deal, licensing deal with Spotify. So we seem to be coming, Spotify wants to get their ducks in a row because they desperately need that IPO, because they're burning through $200 million a year, and on with the current structure of their payments and their fees, they're never going to be profitable. You're talking to Daniel Ek, and you say, okay, I'm holding all the music, or I'm part of the industry that holds all the music that's going to make you successful. How do we arrange things so that we have a strong Spotify financially?
Well, I disagree with you saying that they're never going to be profitable. We know where the numbers are. It's a certain amount of premium subscribers.
What we've been told is that, well, at least what I've understood, and again, I'm here to learn, is that no matter how many subscribers they have, their fixed costs stay the same. So the bigger their audience becomes, the more their costs increase, and there's never that economy of scale. There's never anything where they reach a critical mass and they start making money. Am I wrong?
I believe so.
Okay. How am I wrong? How does this work?
I'm just going from what Stefan tells me.
Okay.
And there's a certain number that they have to hit to where it goes. But one of the things I really believe they're missing, and I've told them this face to face, is they don't do a great job selling the free. You know, there's a lot of commercial inventory, and that's a place, if you're going to have that free space, then sell the fire out of the commercials in the freemium service. But the moment, and I'll compare this to in the States with Sirius and XM. They both launched in 2001, and they promised the DOJ that they would never merge. And so they get their birds up in the sky, and they're running at 200 miles an hour, and they both have deals with the different car companies, and they're never going to be profitable. Kind of what you're talking about, but different because we're talking about hardware, okay? They realized this about 8 years into it. We have got to come together or our satellites are going to fall out of the sky. And so they convinced the DOJ to let them merge, and by 2011, it started to be profitable. Now it's completely robust. They're doing a brilliant business. People love Sirius XM, but think about the model. We're going to give it to you for 30 days or 60 days, and if you don't like it, we're going to turn it off. Daniel has to believe in his product enough to say, you love Spotify, pay for it, or we're going to turn it off.
Well, that's what
because
Apple
I
did.
think people love the service. I love it. It's a great service. I pay for it. So I think we'll get to that moment. But here's another thing you have to remember. It took SiriusXM 10 plus years merging before it was profitable. We want Spotify to be profitable right now. We've got to support it, encourage premium subscriptions, and it has to work. Okay, we don't have a choice. We need to make that thing robust and work for all of us because premium subscriptions are great for everybody sitting in this room, period, the end.
Now, Spotify is the 800-pound gorilla because they've got somewhere north of 50 million paying subscribers now. But then in second and third place, we have Apple, who will never break this out in terms of on their financial reports. They've got about 32 million. And then Google Play, we're not sure. Those two companies at the bottom end have very deep pockets. So they can continue to subsidize those services, much like Apple did with iTunes, until it became, the behemoths cornering 70% of the download market on the planet. Are you talking with them as well?
Oh yeah, Apple are great partners. We've done wonderful things with them, and we have, I can't announce it yet, but they were just in town a couple weeks ago making a really big investment in one of our artists and in Nashville. And their rate of payment is much higher, and I think that...
Wait, why is it higher than Spotify? It's just what they negotiated?
Well, it's all premium.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, I think Apple has a huge opportunity, but I also hear back from people who use it that it needs to be a little bit more user-friendly. So because they still have the store connected to the streaming service, it maybe isn't as easy to use as some of the others. But, thank God that we have Apple investing in us, Google investing in us, Amazon investing in us. With companies that wealthy, why do you think they're investing in us? They can see around the corner.
All right, let's talk about YouTube. There was a story earlier this week with the headline, "The music industry goes to war with YouTube." Explain what the war is all about.
Pay. If you're that wealthy, when I've met with them and continue to meet with them and trying to build a bridge with them, they could make and set a huge example. Because they are such a wealthy company, my missive to them is, you could be the best partner we have. You have the ability to pay more than everybody else. So why not be our best partner? Instead of making up all these rules in safe harbor and playing, they're only playing the monopoly game with their own properties right now. And if they want to stay in the music game, they're gonna have to do better, period, the end. Let's not forget, if you think about, let's go back the last 15 years. When we broke Taylor Swift, we called her the first artist to break from the MySpace generation. Back then we said, oh, MySpace will be here forever, they're great, it's incredible. And then it bombed. And these are happy accidents. Facebook was a happy accident, Twitter was a happy accident. Don't take for granted that there can't be something better than YouTube. It's up to you, Google and YouTube, to get it right. Because you have a better experience with these other services. Is it easy to go on and search and find crazy videos of people singing crazy songs at weddings? Yeah, that's kind of cool, once. But is it really the experience that it could be or should be? No, it's not. They need to do better. They need to be a better partner.
Talk to Troy Carter about Facebook and a music overlay for that service. If you were Zuckerberg, what would you tell them to do when it came to integrating music into the Facebook experience?
Well, again, you're talking about a really smart guy who understands how this should be. And again, so many things have happened so quickly in this space. And I believe that they're going to do the right thing. I just do. I think that the conversations that are being had, he understands how important content is. And he arguably is the first one to graduate and not become MySpace. It's a real business. And there's a lot of smart people there trying to figure out how to continue to be a very robust business that's part of your daily life.
How about Twitter? Should Twitter be in this conversation someplace?
I think you have a different challenge with Twitter because it's a little bit more out of control with Twitter. And they've tried a couple music missives and they haven't worked, and they haven't come close to working. So something to really keep in mind. Anytime you have something that you have an expectation, you know what Twitter is. You know what Spotify is. You know what these different services are. Once they try to become something else, most times we go, well, I don't go there for that. So to try to retrain all of us, like, well, I'm going to go to Twitter for music. Well, I don't think Twitter first to go there for music. Pandora, I think they have they've got a great lean back service. Now that they're getting into the streaming service, can they convince you, if you're a Pandora user, that you now have to pay for it? We'll see, but you don't expect to go there and pay for it. So that first expectation, that first introduction into your psyche is so important, and it's so difficult to change that.
Is there any new technology or app that you see on the horizon that could be at least a short-term game changer?
There are many, and the interesting thing about what we're seeing is, at the end of the day, it's not my responsibility to decide which one. My responsibility is to understand what you like and how you understand it and how you want to use it. You know, we haven't even touched on Snapchat, a completely different world in the way that they present music and how things are shared. And, you know, Snapchat's a real player in this space.
I'm of the age where I don't get Snapchat. I mean, I've tried, I just don't get it, and...
Yeah, I had to train myself.
Yeah,
I didn't immediately get it. It's like, I get my 22-year-old intern over here, I'm like, how does this work? Got it, okay. Would you do it for me?
See, maybe that's what we all need to do, is get our 22-year-old interns to teach us some of these things, because these tricks will help us figure out where things are going.
Indeed. You know, I can't hire enough of them because they're nipping at my heels all day long. Did you think of this? Did you think of... No. Tell me about it. Okay, got it. Let's not do that, but let's do that. But yeah, all day long, and it's great.
Let's go back to some of the broadcast deals that you've struck. What happened with iHeartRadio Clear Channel 2012? What was that?
So we became the first record company in the history of the United States to achieve a terrestrial performance right. Bob Pittman, it was Clear Channel at the time, obviously it's iHeart now. And the entire idea is the way that the 1996 telecom bill reads and the Digital Millennium Act is there's no inspiration for you to broadcast digitally because it's so expensive. You have to pay per song per user,
yes,
per listener. And I'm thinking, okay, how is that good for any of us? It's terrible for radio. It's terrible for us because we're not encouraging you to broadcast us everywhere. So Bob and I came up with a platform of basically a flat revenue. If you're getting paid, pay us. If you're not, don't. So many of the iHeart channels, and iHeart has been up here now on the new app. You know, when you hear a lot of Big Machine music on there, if it's a paid-for channel, great, we're sharing in revenue from that. If it's not, it's a small promotional rate. But the idea was to encourage broadcasters to broadcast, not say, oh, well, we only broadcast terrestrial and we don't broadcast digital. It's like, how about if we just call this broadcasting?
Yeah. We're having the same kind of struggles here as well, because it's too expensive to broadcast digitally, licensing-wise, rates-wise, all the rest of it.
Well, here's the thing. We know where it's going, so let's just get there.
I agree.
You know?
Now, what is the deal that you struck with Bell Media? I know that you've been doing TV all morning. So what is going on here?
So my great friend Randy Lennox, who was my partner from day one with Big Machine at Universal, we came up a year ago, October, and it was just coming off of my first season on American Idol. And we had come up with an idea to really try to reinvent the paradigm of a music competition. And loved the idea. His team is fantastic. So we went in and really dug down into this idea and drilled down and think we've come up with something that really could be a game changer. And the show is called The Launch. And the ideal is we start with a hit song, because working on Idol, and we also have the ability to sign any country artist off of The Voice. So we were involved with the two biggest shows on television. And in that moment, you have your win, you have the next day, and then you as a fan, you go, well, where's the song? Where's the hit single? Where you guys talked about this for 20 weeks. Where is it? And so most record companies were in a mad dash just to get something out, and usually the music wasn't great. And so being the label on American Idol, one of the reasons I did it was try to prepare them for what the day after the show might look like. And right now in the States, we have Trent Harmon, our season 15 winner, with a top 20 single. But still, the song that he performed on the finale is not the single. Because in that mad rush, when you get down to the last two or three, you're like, okay, maybe this song will work for this one, this, and then you just hope that it works. I don't like to operate on hope. So we're going to start with a great production team, 2 other great celebrity artist mentors, and start with a song. We're already collecting. We have great songs. And so we're going to basically cast for this song. It's like, okay, here's a great pop song, and here's where we're going to go through all these thousands of videos that are already being uploaded to the channel and go and really turn this thing on its head, because we'll have 5 artists come across and sing for us. We will select 2 of them to record the song with our production team. And then we will go, okay, you know what? We love Alan's version. We think it's a little bit better than Randy's. But the final act is you have to perform. And you better knock it out of the park, because we might go, man, Alan, your record might be a little bit better, but Randy's performance whole package, Randy, you're the launch. And when we launch this, it literally goes on every digital platform. It goes across all the Bell Media, radio, TV, mobile, internet, etc. It's a total pop culture crush. So we're flipping the model on its head. Instead of trying to go, okay, we have this artist, let's find the song. It's like, we've got a great song, great production team. Where are you?
So is this do you see this in terrestrial TV, or is it online, or is there competition?
Terrestrial TV, straight at it. And it's born in Canada, which I love.
Oh,
so ctv.ca/the launch.
And when does this begin?
So you can upload your videos right now, and we'll cut off on May 10th. We will produce in the summer, and we'll be on the air in 2018.
Make it 2 parts CanCon, everybody will be happy.
You know what? I hope that works. But you know what? In fairness to all the great Canadian artists, we just want to make the best record. If it can be CanCon, we will try to do that. But I can't make any promises, because if we have a great American producer and songwriter and a great Canadian artist, at the end of the day, I want that Canadian artist to have a huge hit off of a show.
Okay. We have to talk about cars.
Awesome.
Because you and I are both petrol heads.
We're sick, actually.
Yeah, it's not. So I'm looking again. Here's another example of where I completely missed the boat in my life. I've always wanted to be a race car driver. You have been a race car driver, but you drive trucks?
Well, we drove in late model stock cars and super trucks. So yes.
Okay.
So it's basically
is this
a stock car with a truck body on
okay,
it.
so this is you would be NASCAR or F1.
No, I love everything.
Okay.
I was just able to, if you're living in the South, you're going to race stock cars.
Right. And, okay, super trucks hasn't really come up this far yet, so explain what super trucks are.
It's a stock car with the truck body on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fine. So you just bought a car the other day, a car that I've been actually tracing the provenance of for about 4 years now?
Yeah, 5.
5 years? It's one of the rarest American-made supercars that you can possibly get. Explain what a Hennessy Venom is. So
John Hennessy is a supercar turbocharger in Houston, Texas. And in 2010, 2011, he started making this car called the Venom. There are 13 of them. And Steven Tyler saw one of the early ones. He called John, he said, I want one of those, but you gotta pull the top off. I wanna have a GT, blah, 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 talked him into it. And so this GT is 01, so it's Hennessy Venom GT 01. And so I got to see the car the first time when I met with Steven and signed him to the Big Machine label group. And then last year, he said, hey, I'm gonna put this thing up for auction, and all the money's gonna go to Janie's Fund, which helps young girls in trouble, and it's a fantastic charity. And so I was in Nashville online.
Wait.
Yeah.
The retail of this car was 1.1, 1.2?
Yeah.
The original, what Steven bought it for, about 1.2, okay.
So we ended up, I know this sounds crazy, but we got a much better deal than that. But the great news is the car is amazing, and we helped a bunch of young girls. And you are welcome to take a ride when you come to Nashville.
I am coming to Nashville.
This car, just so you know, it's the fastest production car in the world, 270 miles an hour.
So if Bugatti Veyron, Bugatti Chiron, nothing on this thing.
We got you.
You got you, okay. Wow. Now, is Big Machine, by the way, is that a reference to racing? Where did the name come from for the label?
It came predominantly from 2 places. And when we're at the track and when we're having a good practice or good qualifying sessions, like, we got a Big Machine today. It feels really good. And then the other thing, which is very random, but the Velvet Revolver song, Big Machine. I just always loved that song. And when we were thinking about what could be the most powerful thing that we could do being an independent label, and somewhat kind of just elbowing our way into it, the craziest thing we could do was declare ourselves a big machine, because we were anything but a big machine. But it's like, you know what? I'm just going to declare that we are. So it was really the most kind of punk rock thing we could do. We're just going, we're in here whether you like it or not.
Yeah, we'll get off cars after this last question. What's also in your garage?
Do we have any gearheads here, or are we just kind of talking to ourselves at this point? I think we're somewhat talking to ourselves.
Okay, all right, we'll catch up later. That's fine. We only have a few minutes left. Where do you see the music industry going over the next 3 to 5 years? I don't think we can make any plans beyond that because things are changing so fast in terms of technology and consumer behavior. Where do you think things are going to go in that short-term period? And how are you planning for it?
Great question, and it's something we talk about. It's in our daily conversation. You know, the end of physical is all but here now. We probably have another fourth quarter or two for big releases, but we've talked about streaming, what has to happen, but there are huge opportunities with VR, with AR, and the experiences.
I've talked to a couple of people this week about VR and AR, and there are a lot of competing visions for what those things may mean to music. Can you give me a VR, AR idea where you'd like to go?
Yeah, I think it's the experience, and we've got to make it where it's very easily accessible. We can't have these big funky glasses on. We've got to figure out a way to give it to you where it's very easy and very fun to use. And somebody will figure out that moment. But there's also 3D opportunities. One of my good friends who's in the audience, Rick Barker, turned me on to this new app that is something we're trying to get our arms around, that has a 3D piece that jumps off of your phone. It's incredible. So I think those are the type of things that are going to keep us really engaged, because music is just going to get more visual. There's an expectation that everything we do musically is visual in some kind of context.
Holograms.
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple of people about holograms, and they've got some really interesting ideas that's more than just having Ronnie James Dio up here on the stage and sing a couple of songs.
It's amazing. And the app I was talking about, the 3D hologram, it's a big part of what we're going to be able to do.
And for all the Taylor Swift fans in the crowd, what's coming next from her?
First rule of Taylor Club.
Don't talk. Okay.
Don't talk
all
about
right.
Taylor Club.
Don't talk about.
But do we have any questions or anything? I feel like we want to make sure you're in the conversation. Yeah. So, hey, the question back there.
Yep. On? Yeah. What? That's okay. After you. Okay. Sorry. I wanted to go back to when you mentioned the importance of educating the younger generation on the value of music in order to not only spread the awareness of the phenomenon that is music, but to increase awareness of the importance to pay for music. I was wondering what your opinion is on the music industry's role in discussing how we should educate the younger generation. Well, we found that artists are the best way. People, the dumbest thing we ever did was start suing grandmothers over Napster, right? So we don't need a bunch of lawyers making these declarations. We need trusted sources. We need artists to show you how they're doing it and how they use it and how they value it. You need a trusted source. So that's why people like Taylor, et cetera, that are going, hey, this is all great, but here's the best way to do it so we can keep doing it. And so you as a young artist may have the opportunity to do it.
We have time for maybe 2 more.
All right, really quick. I know that the streaming business is changing a lot of record sales and stuff like that. Is the paperwork changing for producers?
You know what?
And songwriters?
It's a great question. And that's something that we fight for every day, because you need to be paid. And so that's why we got to get to scale. We've got to get to make sure we get back to some form of a dollar business. This fractional penny business is really tough, but the only way home for you to get paid is for this thing to scale, because we still want you to get your advances. We still want to give you 4 points or whatever it is per side, and we will. But we've got to get more money in the pool, and the good news is that's coming.
Good. All right, thanks.
Okay, 1 more.
What is your favorite thing about discovering incredible artists?
My favorite thing about discovering incredible artists is discovering incredible artists. That's why we're doing this show. That's why we're involved in all of these other things. I'm addicted to new artists. It's the funnest thing. We've had so much wonderful success, and whether it's what we get to do with Taylor, or do we have any Cheap Trick fans in the audience? Yeah. I'm going to talk about them for just a minute. If we go over, I apologize in advance. But about 5 years ago, Tom Peterson, the bass player, lives in Nashville, and we become friends. And he said, I would love for you to meet Robin Zander and Rick Nielsen. I said, okay, that'd be cool. So they came in, and they're talking about what's going on, and they had the terrible accident up here with the stage. They had lawsuits, they had debt, and it broke my heart. And at that time, before Irving Azoff left Live Nation, we had a management company together. And I called Irving, I said, if I can get Cheap Trick, what do you think? He goes, I love them. Get Ken Levitan down in Nashville to partner with you, so I get Ken on board. So I wrote them what I call my Jerry Maguire email. If you never talk to me again, it's okay, but here's what's wrong. And I can't stand by and watch this happen. You need to make a new record, you need to tour Japan, you need this corporate endorsement, you need the proper tour, you need to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so I heard back from each one of them over the next 48 hours, and they said, basically, we're in. And last year, we put out a new album, they toured Japan, and they made the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And you talk about pride, yeah, a lot of pride there. We have a new Cheap Trick album coming in June of this year, so. But yeah, it never gets old. As far as the ability to find you and help you, when we do our best work, we provide the arena for you to do your best work. When we have that trust and go, I get you, I understand what you want to do, I'm going to put you in the best possible place to do your best work, and then they do it. And you just go, yeah, that was a good day.
Thank you very much, Scott. This has been fantastic. We could go on for another hour or two. We haven't even talked about big data. We haven't talked about metadata. We haven't talked about so many other things. Please come back another year so we can do this again.
Thank you, everybody.